The BBC. Basically big charges.
Hello and welcome to the Mark and Pete Show. This week, we ask the question, scrap the licence fee or scrap the BBC? Well, as we do each week, Clergyman Pete will talk about the business of religion, and Business of Mark will talk about the religion of business. Yes, now, many pensioners over the age of 75 will certainly have some contention with the BBC. And here's a little sentiment. Once there was the TV set, then came the great BBC. Viewers ogled through the years until each became an OAP, licensed to tune in every day. They sat and watched with glee, but someone's pulled the plug and now it's no longer free. Yes, well, 3.7 million pensioners are being now charged from 2020 the full BBC licence fee. Now, if you like the BBC and you enjoy their programmes, well, you're now going to have to pay a hefty fee. So Clergyman Pete, starting to save up for your pension.
Yes.
And now having to pay the full licence fee. Is this fair?
Well, yes. Now, I have to up front just admit something to everyone now, which sort of changes your view on my commentary, in that I don't own a television and so I don't have pay the licence fee. I do watch video forms of news and that sort of thing, but I usually watch it on places like Reuters and of course YouTube. I don't watch the BBC very rarely unless someone throws up a clip of it. So I have, I suppose, an objective point of view on this. I stopped watching TV. As in broadcast TV, some time ago. But my view on this is, let's take the humanitarian point of view. It's more nuanced than you might think, in that when you get elderly, so someone who's retired and a pensioner could be have all their marbles and be skipping about for many years, but it's also possible that because you're just plonked in front of a TV and you end up sitting there for hours and hours, your mind gets addled and, your intelligence seeps out through your ears and there's nothing left of your personality. It's good.
There. Some people might say that the BBC is actually educational.
Yes, the BBC, if they suddenly charging you as they're planning to from June next year, and not as many elderly people can watch the TV. Is that a good thing? Well, I say no, because it's their choice to watch it in general. Unless you're in a home, in which case you're not paying the licence fee, I imagine. So because it's their choice, they may be maybe the family have plonked them in front of it if they're reliant on others. But if they got used to watching the TV, and I do think it is detrimental just to sit around, but you may not be just sitting around, you may just want to catch the news every now and then. So therefore, as you've been promised by the government and by the BBC that you won't have to pay a licence fee, I think it's simply wrong not to carry through on that promise. And it's for people 75 and over, they should continue to have it free. Now I have Mark and Pete, we at Mark and Pete have a further view on that. So before you go into the business view, so I've sort of the religious and ethical view is that I think that that shouldn't be done, because you need to follow through on your promises, and it's taking away something that people see as a lifeline, rightly or wrongly. As I say, there is another point of view. The BBCs aren't good for your health. Not BBC, but I think that's true as well. But I meant television generally. It's not as good for your health as other ways of receiving news and entertainment. But be that as it may, if that's your choice of what you're used to, and you've been promised it for free, you should be able to access it for free. But the question is wider than that, I think. I would say, yes, it should be free for them, those, that is to say, the 75 and over, but it should be free for everyone, and not just people like me who don't have a telly. I think, in other words, you should scrap the license fee. Now, you, Mark, will be able to speak more to whether that makes business sense, but just in terms of moral sense, it seems to me, now, I've looked at this a little bit, being interested in the history of broadcasting. It seems to me it was just really a historical accident that we ended up with this way of paying for our major TV and radio provider, and because historically it's been done, it's carried on being done, but it's not the best way to fund broadcasters. And so I would say let's move as quickly as possible to not funding them in that way. And there were so many other models: sponsorship, advertising. There were different ways. Well, you know more about that. So that's my view.
Come on to the business side.
Yes,
I just want to close off the religious and the moral side, because the BBC said fairness was at the heart of the ruling, which, as you say, comes into force in June 2020.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to fairness, I agree that the reneging on the promise is wrong. But my question to you is this, that there's also another thing that's probably sticking in the craw of many a pensioner on this matter, which is the fees that some of the top celebrities are actually earning. And
yes, I'd forgotten that. Yes.
Whilst the BBC is actually trying to save around £745 million, I'm going to ask you a question. Who, in your view, are the top earners? I'm actually going to give you their names. So Gary Lineker, who presents Match of the Day. There's the chat show host Graham Norton. There's also Steve Wright, who is the Radio 2 presenter. And, of course, there is Claudia Winkleman, who is the top female star. So very quickly, so that we can get onto the business side, how much do you think Gary Lineker is paid per year?
Okay, now he's got extremely big ears, and he's well known, from his sporting days. I'm going to say, so what a ball figure. I'm going to say $250,000 a year. I'm going to say it's 250. No, 250,000. I was going to say 250 million. No, 250,000.
Right. Well, I hope you're sitting comfortably, folks. No, you are way off. He's actually earning £1,750,000. There is an additional 10,000, depending on what kind of programs that he will do. So you're a little bit off.
Yes, it's interesting because I haven't watched TV for some time, and I don't normally watch the sort of shows that he presents, and I haven't seen him for some time. But when I last saw him, he really wasn't that competent.
Now, you may have noticed a fundamental flaw in the BBC's decisions there.
Yes.
But
go on, let's do the others.
Graham Norton, chat show host.
Now, Graham Norton, it's a big show, very successful show. I expected him to earn a lot more than Gary Lineker. I think he's an amusing sort of chap. He gets on the top guests. Okay, I'm going to say, because I've already had I'm going to say 1.2 million.
No, 600,000. I'm even going to go straight into letting you know, and here we go. Steve Wright earns 550,000.
Okay, let me guess the other one. I want to guess Claudia Winkleman. Yes, I'm going
to top female star.
Yes, I'm going to go for this. I think the top female is going to earn less, so I'm going to go with her. Well, what I originally said, 250,000.
370,000 to 379 and a bit thousand.
Okay.
Yes,
they are expensive.
License fee. But let's talk about the business angle here. So the key here is I understand what's happened. That basically a few years ago there was the promise made by the government and the BBC that they would commit to 75-year-olds having a free license fee. Unfortunately, what has happened is, with the commitments of the BBC, with the size of its empire, with the costs of its key stars, as well as all of the journalists and all the presenters and all the people that make up the whole of the BBC, it has to save £745 million. That is a lot of money. But what I would say is that there is a bigger question now. Many people have complained about the BBC because of the fact that it keeps recycling its programs. There is a question mark over its standards. There is another factor as well, which is that, as you have already highlighted, the BBC has been around a long, long time and traditionally has definitely gained a lot of credibility, not just, of course, in the United Kingdom, but throughout the world, as being basically a flagship of a broadcasting empire. Those days, I think, are going. And it's being challenged on a number of fronts. Social media, other channels, Freeview channels, and so on, who clearly are starting to challenge the BBC. Is it now time that the BBC became independent? And my question here would be is, why couldn't it survive by being independent? Because if it felt that it could only rely on being government-based, I think that there is a danger that the complacency that we now start to see, and we've seen this through some of the issues of journalism, the standards of journalism. Let's take, for example, the issue of the BBC with its broadcasting ethics over, say, for example, things like Cliff Richard.
Yes.
If we see what's happened there, along with many other channels, so it's not just the BBC, but the BBC has basically been put under a lot of criticism in terms of its standards and its ethics.
Yes,
I think if it was in a different realm, if it was an independent organization, I think a couple of things would happen. I think it needs to consolidate its radio programs. There are too many. I think there are too many channels generally in its broadcast. Now, it's all very well me saying this, but I think a lot of people, even within the BBC itself, have recognized that actually it's just too unwieldy and it's starting to lose its purpose. What is it actually offering?
Yes,
At what
I agree.
time,
Yes.
the BBC really was a bastion for great British broadcasting of news, timely news, quality news, factual news, and then it sort of moved into this other area of making what we call entertainment shows. Now, the entertainment shows, we know that it does, but over the years, what it's done is it outsourced. It's used independent production companies. So what is really now the BBC? So the BBC has been watered down a little.
Yes.
So, in my opinion, just just to conclude the business strategy,
sure.
I think that there needs to be a review where the government, as well as heads of the BBC, need to come together and think about the future of the BBC, because it can't linger the way it's going at the moment. I think what will happen is, if you think of the demographics, there are now a generation who are not looking at the BBC and actually not even looking at television anymore. They're actually looking at YouTube, the gaming, and all these sort of things. So BBC now has to decide what is its purpose and what will it be good at.
Yes,
and I think that my opinion is now is the time for the next government, whoever comes in as the next leader of the United Kingdom, should come in and start to think about repackaging the BBC and move it forward.
Yes, so just in close, what I was going to add was that the BBC has been very good at switching into new media and has an excellent website, and it has its media player, and it's revamping its podcast presence, and that may well be the future of radio. You know, radio being on demand in future, but that being the case. With licenses having to be paid by people who are 75 and older, what you're doing, even for those younger than that, you're penalising them. You know, they've got used to this way, as in watching broadcast television, of consuming their entertainment and news. And they don't have, whereas younger people are au fait with the internet and that they're used to the new ways. They don't need to have a television. They don't need to pay the license fee anyway. Right. So for going forward, yes, I think a new business model, as you've outlined, is absolutely needed. But right now, what they need to do is not charge the 75 and over pensioners for the license fee. It's just wrong.
I think it's wrong, but I think that it comes back to the point that these individuals, and there are always exceptions.
Yes.
But the fact is these people are not working, and they've budgeted for their livelihoods, and to suddenly have to pay the money that now is not in their budget, that's a hefty fee for most people to have to pay. But there's also those people who are going into retirement, and that again, people would have had the expectations that if the government and the BBC had promised this, that they would, when they reach 75, would get it free. I think that I agree. I think that now that what they should do is retract this policy. Maybe what they could consider is, as part of my suggestion as a business one is think about the remodeling and the restructure of the BBC, scale it back a bit, and that's not to compromise in any way its standards or the quality of the shows. In fact, I think actually it would improve it because it would get rid of some of the the dross that we've sort of intimated in terms of perhaps some hefty star fees that perhaps shouldn't be there, and that money could be put into something which I think would be much more purposeful. Well, listeners, what do you think? Do you feel that actually this is the right thing to do? Maybe that is the model that works, and people should be paying a fee, a license fee, if they want to use a service. Or maybe you've got a different view. Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, this is going to rumble for a while, and somebody has got to make a decision whether this is going to happen or not. But 2020 is not far away. Well, you might not be watching the BBC, but definitely listen to Mark and Pete Show. Toodle pip.